Think about the last time you saw someone lose their temper, maybe in traffic, online, or even in your own life. There's a certain rawness to it, a kind of explosive energy that demands attention. Society often mistakes that outburst for strength, as if volume and aggression are proof of power. But what if true strength isn't about how loudly you react, but how deeply you can remain unfazed? The Stoics understood this better than anyone. 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the heart of Stoicism, a quiet, unshakable resilience that doesn't need to announce itself. This video isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending you don't feel anything. It's about something far more transformative, mastering the art of non-reaction. Imagine being the calm in the middle of chaos, the person who doesn't get pulled into every argument or derailed by every setback. That's the silent language of strength the Stoics practiced, and it's just as relevant today. In a world that constantly tries to provoke us through social media, through pressure, through noise, learning to choose your responses deliberately isn't just philosophy, it's a superpower. So why do Stoics place such value on non-reaction? Because they saw it as the ultimate form of control. Not control over others, but over yourself. When you refuse to be rattled by insults, inconveniences, or even outright hostility, you reclaim your agency. You stop handing your peace of mind to whoever happens to push your buttons. And here's the best part, this isn't some abstract ideal. By the end of this video, you'll walk away with practical tools to cultivate this mindset in your own life. Whether it's dealing with a difficult coworker, navigating family tension, or simply finding more grounding in your day-to-day. This is the quiet strength that changes everything. Let's begin. Why do we feel this urgent need to react when someone pushes our buttons? It's as if we believe that by responding, whether with anger, defensiveness, or even frantic justification, we're somehow taking back control. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That reaction is often just an illusion of control. The Stoics saw this centuries ago. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, drew a clear line between what's in our power and what isn't. He called it the dichotomy of control. On one side, you have everything outside yourself, other people's opinions, unexpected events, even the weather. On the other side, you have your own judgments, choices, and actions. The moment you start reacting to things you can't control, you're handing over your power. Think about how this plays out today. You're scrolling through social media and someone posts something that feels like a personal attack. Your fingers hover over the keyboard, itching to fire back. But ask yourself, what does that reaction actually achieve? Even if you win the argument, have you changed anything meaningful or just exhausted yourself? The Stoics would say that real strength isn't in winning the debate. It's in recognizing when the debate isn't worth your energy. Non-reaction isn't passive. It's a deliberate choice to invest your attention where it matters. Now, take a second to recall a recent moment when you reacted without thinking. Maybe it was a snippy comment to a coworker or a frustrated sigh in a long line at the store. In that instant, did your reaction improve the situation or just amplify the tension? The Stoic approach flips the script. Instead of asking, "How can I fix this external problem?" you ask, "How can I protect my peace?" That shift changes everything. It's not about ignoring life's challenges. It's about refusing to let them dictate your state of mind. And when you master that, you'll notice something surprising. The things that used to trigger you start losing their grip. The noise fades, and what's left is the quiet confidence of someone who knows where their real power lies. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Picture this: someone throws an insult your way, and instead of firing back, you simply pause. That split second of stillness isn't empty, it's charged with power. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who navigated the chaos of Nero's Rome, called this pause the space where wisdom breathes. He wrote letters urging his friends to cultivate this habit, not as a way to avoid conflict, but to disarm it. Because when you pause, you do something extraordinary. You step out of reaction and into choice. History gives us a striking example. When the Roman general Scipio Africanus was accused of corruption by political rivals, he didn't rage or scramble to defend himself. He stood in silence, then calmly laid out his ledger for all to see. His restraint turned the crowd in his favor, not because he was passive, but because his non-reaction revealed confidence. The accusation crumbled under the weight of his composure. That's the power of pause. It transforms tension into clarity. Here's how it works in your brain. When you're provoked, your amygdala, the emotional alarm system, triggers a fight or flight response. But when you consciously pause, even for 5 seconds, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of your mind that weighs logic over impulse. That tiny gap is where Stoic wisdom lives. It's the difference between snapping at a rude comment and asking, "Is this worth my energy?" Between resentfully obeying a demanding boss and calmly proposing boundaries. The pause doesn't just prevent regret, it reveals better options you'd miss in the heat of the moment. So let's make this practical. Next time you feel that surge of frustration, maybe when someone cuts you off in traffic or dismisses your idea in a meeting, try this. Count to 5 in your head before you speak or act. Those 5 seconds are your fortress. Use them to ask 2 Stoic questions. Can I control this? And what's the wise response? You'll notice something fascinating. The urge to react starts feeling less like an inevitability and more like a suggestion, one you're free to decline. That's the silent language of strength, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of space between feeling and action. There's a hidden alchemy in how we handle emotions, one the Stoics practiced daily. Imagine your anger, frustration, or hurt as raw material, not something to be suppressed, but something to be transformed. Marcus Aurelius put it perfectly: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, every provocation is secretly an invitation to grow, to practice patience, to prove to yourself what you're made of. Take something as simple as a rude comment from a colleague. Your first instinct might be to snap back or brood over it for hours. But what if instead you saw that moment as a test? Not of your wit or your ability to clap back, but of your discipline. The Stoics called this process the practice of attentive awareness. It's the art of catching yourself before emotion takes the wheel and asking, what can I learn here? How can this make me better? That shift turns friction into fuel. Here's how it works in practice. Say someone dismisses your idea in a meeting. Your face grows hot, your pulse quickens, classic signs that your emotions are rising. But instead of reacting, you take a breath and reframe. This isn't an attack, it's a chance to practice poise. Maybe you even thank them for the feedback, not because you agree, but because you refuse to let their tone dictate yours. That's emotional alchemy, taking the heat of the moment and using it to forge something stronger. The real magic happens when you start documenting these moments. Grab a journal tonight and ask yourself, what emotion did I feel most intensely today? How could I have transformed it? Maybe it was road rage that could have been channeled into patience, or envy that could have become motivation. Writing it down isn't just reflection, it's rehearsal for next time, because stillness isn't about avoiding emotions, it's about mastering their energy. And when you do, you'll find that the things meant to knock you off balance become the very things that ground you. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded festival, music blaring, people shouting, colors flashing all around you. Now picture yourself not as a participant caught up in the chaos, but as a calm observer, taking it all in without being swept away. That's the essence of the Stoic observer mindset. Epictetus used this exact analogy, comparing the philosopher to someone watching a spectacle. His point wasn't to encourage detachment from life, but to teach the power of perspective. When you step back and observe instead of react, you gain something priceless: clarity. Think about how most of us navigate daily irritations. A driver cuts you off and instantly your body tenses, your jaw clenches. You're no longer just driving, you're embroiled in a personal injustice. But what if you could witness that moment like a scientist studying a phenomenon? Not "how dare they," but "interesting, my heart rate just spiked." That shift from participant to observer doesn't numb your emotions, it gives you the space to decide if they're worth your energy. Nature offers a perfect metaphor here. Watch a tree in a storm. Its branches bend, leaves tremble, but the trunk remains rooted. It doesn't resist the wind. It observes the force and adjusts without breaking. The Stoics saw human resilience the same way. When you practice observation, you're not ignoring life's storms, you're learning to stand firm within them. Marcus Aurelius wrote pages of reminders to himself, almost like field notes on his own reactions. Today I felt anger rise. Why? What story am I telling myself? That's observation in action. Here's the challenge. Next time you feel triggered, whether by a critical email, a passive-aggressive comment, or even just overwhelming stress, pause and pretend you're watching the scene from a balcony above. Notice your physical reactions, the heat in your cheeks, the tightness in your chest. Label them silently. There's frustration, there's defensiveness. This isn't avoidance, it's awareness, and awareness is the first step to breaking free from impulsive reactions. The beauty of this practice is that it reveals a hidden truth. Most of what upsets us isn't the event itself, but our interpretation of it. Two people can face the same delay at the airport. One spirals into outrage, the other pulls out a book. The difference isn't circumstance, it's observation. By training yourself to witness emotions without being hijacked by them, you reclaim the power to choose your response. And that's where real strength lies, not in never feeling, but in never being ruled by feeling. Words carry weight far more than we often realize. The Stoics understood this deeply, treating speech not as something to be spent freely, but as a resource to be measured carefully. Seneca warned, "The tongue, if not restrained, is the most dangerous weapon we possess." He wasn't advocating for silence as a default, but for precision. Every word to a Stoic is a choice, an opportunity to either strengthen your resolve or scatter your energy. Think about the last time you felt compelled to fill a quiet moment with chatter, or to respond to a provocation with a torrent of words. Did those words serve you, or did they dilute your power? History offers a striking example in the figure of George Washington. Known for his deliberate silence, he cultivated an aura of authority not through grand speeches, but through strategic restraint. During the Constitutional Convention, while others debated fiercely, Washington often remained quiet, but when he finally spoke, the room stilled. His words carried gravity because they weren't wasted. That's the Stoic ideal, speech that's purposeful, not performative. It's not about being mute, it's about ensuring your words align with your values and intent. There's a quiet magnetism to this kind of restraint. Consider how often we mistake volume for credibility, how we assume the person talking the loudest must be the most confident. But true confidence doesn't need to announce itself. A study in leadership psychology found that the most influential people in group settings often speak less, not more. Their interventions are timely and measured, cutting through noise rather than adding to it. The Stoics would nod in recognition. When you refuse to engage in every trivial debate or react to every slight, you're not withdrawing, you're conserving your influence for what truly matters. Try this experiment today. Notice how often you speak out of habit rather than necessity. The awkward pause in a conversation that you rush to fill. The reflexive complaint about the weather or traffic. Even the well-intentioned but unnecessary commentary. Each of these moments is a tiny leak in your focus. Now imagine redirecting that energy. What if, instead of filling silence, you let it settle? What if you replaced half your words with listening? You'd start to notice something profound. The less you say, the more your words mean. This isn't just about external perception, it's about internal discipline. Every time you resist the urge to gossip, to vent impulsively, or to defend yourself against trivial criticisms, you're strengthening your inner resolve. Language to the Stoics was a mirror of the mind. A cluttered speech reveals a cluttered mind. A measured response reflects a disciplined one. So ask yourself, are your words building bridges or just noise? Are they serving your peace or sacrificing it to the moment? The answers might surprise you, and they'll reveal where your real strength lies. Discretion is the invisible thread that ties non-reaction to wisdom. It's not just about holding back, but knowing why you hold back. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly when he wrote, "If someone irritates you, it's only your own opinion doing the irritating." He compared pointless arguments to the barking of dogs, loud, inevitable, but ultimately meaningless unless you choose to stop and engage. That's the heart of Stoic discernment. It's not indifference, it's the ability to separate what deserves your energy from what only feels urgent in the moment. Consider how this plays out today. You're in an online thread where someone misrepresents your point, and every muscle in your body tenses to correct them. But here's the question the Stoics would ask. What's the cost of engagement, not just in time, but in emotional bandwidth? Every minute spent debating a stranger is a minute stolen from deeper work, quieter joys, or real relationships. The modern world thrives on outrage. Algorithms reward it. Headlines sensationalize it, but Stoic discretion asks you to pause and measure the actual stakes. Will this exchange matter in a week, a year, or is it just another echo in the chamber of noise? This isn't about avoiding conflict altogether. Some battles are worth fighting. The ones that align with your values, protect your boundaries, or serve a greater good. The key is the filter. Imagine a close friend vents unfairly to you. Discretion might mean listening calmly instead of retaliating, because the relationship matters more than the momentary sting. But if that same friend repeatedly crosses a line, Stoicism wouldn't advise silence. It would demand clear, intentional action. The difference lies in choice, not habit. Practical discernment starts with a simple habit. Next time you feel pulled into a reaction, picture a scale. On one side, place the immediate satisfaction of responding. On the other, the long-term cost to your peace. Ask, does this align with my principles or just my pride? You'll start noticing patterns. The coworker who nitpicks your reports doesn't need a confrontation, just a mental note to double-check your work before sharing. The troll in your comments section doesn't need rebutting, just the mute button. Discretion isn't passivity. It's the art of investing your energy where it grows, not where it drains. Marcus Aurelius left us a final clue in his meditations. The best revenge is to not be like your enemy. When you decline to engage in petty battles, you're not conceding, you're elevating. You're proving that your peace is more valuable than their provocation. So reflect tonight. What's one conflict you've been feeding that doesn't deserve your fire? And what would happen if you simply let it burn out on its own? That's the quiet power of knowing the difference between a war and a whisper. Imagine standing in the center of a hurricane, winds howling, debris flying, yet you remain perfectly still. That's equanimity, not the absence of the storm, but the ability to stand steady within it. Epictetus called this the philosopher's fortress, an inner citadel no external chaos can breach. While modern culture often treats outrage as a virtue mistaking volume for conviction, the Stoics saw something far more powerful in calm. It's the difference between a leaf tossed by every breeze and a mountain that weathers the storm without bending. Think of a boxer in the ring. The untrained eye watches fists fly and assumes aggression wins fights. But seasoned fighters know the real art lies in the dodge, the pivot, the moments they don't engage. Every punch avoided is energy conserved for the decisive blow. Life's provocations work the same way. When you refuse to meet every insult with a reaction, you're not retreating, you're conserving strength for battles that truly matter. The Stoics weren't advocating passivity, they were teaching strategic disengagement. Now consider how society rewards the opposite. Social media algorithms amplify outrage, workplaces celebrate the busiest, not the most effective, and relationships often mistake drama for passion. But equanimity cuts through the noise like a lighthouse beam, steady, unwavering, guiding. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire in constant turmoil, yet his journal reveals a man more focused on mastering his own mind than controlling external chaos. His power came from a simple truth: you can't calm the storm, but you can always calm yourself. Here's your challenge this week. Identify one area where you'll practice this unshakable calm, maybe in traffic, during a frustrating work call, or when scrolling through divisive headlines. When the urge to react surges, picture Epictetus' fortress. Those walls aren't made of stone, but of choice. You don't have to step outside just because someone knocks loudly. Let the chaos rage. Your peace isn't out there. It's in the space you create between stimulus and response. And that space, that's where your real strength lies. We've been conditioned to believe that winning means having the last word, proving our point, or forcing someone to admit they're wrong. But what if victory isn't about dominating the conversation? It's about preserving your peace. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: it's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They are inescapable. Just try to escape your own. In other words, the only battle worth winning is the one against your own impulses. When you prioritize inner calm over external validation, you redefine what success looks like. Take a common scenario: you're in a heated debate, and the other person twists your words. The old script tells you to correct them, to double down, to make them understand. But the Stoic script asks, what's the cost? Even if you win, you've likely drained your energy, amplified stress, and possibly damaged the relationship. Now imagine walking away instead, not out of defeat but out of discernment. That's not losing, it's upgrading. You've traded a temporary ego boost for something far more valuable: uninterrupted peace. There's an old parable about two monks crossing a river. One carries a scorpion on his back, even as it stings him repeatedly. The other monk asks, "Why bother? It's only going to hurt you again." The first monk replies, "The scorpion's nature is to sting. My nature is to help. Why should I let its nature change mine?" That's the essence of Stoic detachment. When you refuse to let others' behavior dictate your reactions, you're not ignoring reality, you're protecting your integrity. The scorpion will always sting, but you don't have to carry it. This isn't about rolling over or avoiding conflict at all costs. It's about choosing your battles with surgical precision. Think of it like a chess game. Amateurs react to every move, frantically defending each piece. Grand masters sacrifice pawns to protect the king. Your peace is the king. When you let go of the need to win every minor skirmish, you free up energy for the moves that truly matter, the ones that align with your values and long-term well-being. So here's the challenge. Next time you feel the urge to react, pause and ask, what am I really winning here? If the answer is just pride or momentary satisfaction, consider walking away. Not because you can't fight, but because you've chosen a higher victory. The world will keep throwing scorpions your way, but you get to decide whether to carry them or let the river wash them away. The Stoics had a radical approach to attention. They treated it like currency, spending it only where it yielded real value. Seneca compared the mind to a fertile field. Plant junk seeds and you'll harvest weeds. Cultivate what matters and you'll reap wisdom. This wasn't just abstract advice. He practiced it ruthlessly, abandoning Rome's gossip-filled dinner parties for quiet study, writing. You must withdraw into yourself as much as possible. Associate with those who will make you better. Notice what he's really saying. Attention isn't passive. It's a series of deliberate choices about what and who deserves space in your mind. Modern life tests this discipline daily. Think about how often you've lost hours to mindless scrolling, or how a single notification can derail your focus. The average person checks their phone 58 times a day, not because they need to, but because their attention has been hijacked by trivial demands. The Stoic solution, a mental sieve. Imagine holding a strainer over your thoughts and asking, does this concern me? Can I influence it? Does it align with my growth? If an input, whether a news headline, a coworker's complaint, or an algorithm-fed outrage doesn't pass through those filters, it doesn't get your mental real estate. Here's a telling experiment from psychology. Researchers asked subjects to ignore a nearby conversation while working. Those who simply tried not to listen performed poorly, but those who actively focused on their task barely noticed the distraction. That's the Stoic secret. Attention isn't about resisting distraction. It's about being so engaged with what matters that distractions fade. Marcus Aurelius modeled this during wartime, writing meditations amid battle preparations. He wasn't ignoring reality. He was choosing where to place his focus amidst chaos. Try this today. Carry a small notebook and jot down every thought or interruption that pulls you off course. By evening, categorize them: controllable, important, or noise. You'll likely find that most of what drains you falls into the third category. That's not judgment, it's data. The next step is even more powerful. For 1 week, deliberately replace 15 minutes of low-value input social media, idle chatter with high-value focus, reading, reflection, or meaningful conversation. The difference in mental clarity will feel like lifting a fog. This discipline isn't about austerity, it's about sovereignty. Every time you ignore a petty argument or mute a toxic channel, you're not missing out, you're upgrading. Picture your attention as a spotlight. Right now, it's probably flickering everywhere, illuminating little, but train it steadily on what truly serves you, and suddenly, everything else falls into shadow. That's the Stoic art of focus, not seeing less, but seeing more clearly by removing the glare of the insignificant. History remembers Cato the Younger not for fiery speeches or dramatic gestures, but for something far more powerful: his silence. In the final hours of Rome's Republic, as corruption and chaos swirled around him, Cato stood apart. When senators shouted insults, he listened calmly. When rivals tried to provoke him, he simply turned the page of the book he was reading. This wasn't indifference, it was a masterclass in leadership through presence. While others sought attention, Cato embodied a truth the Stoics held sacred. Influence isn't seized through noise, it's earned through unshakable composure. Fast forward to today, and we live in the age of the hot take, where social media rewards snap judgments and outrage is monetized. We've confused visibility with authority, mistaking the loudest voice in the room for the wisest. But the Stoics would ask us to reconsider. Picture two mentors, one who constantly lectures about discipline while checking their phone mid-sentence, and another who listens deeply, responds thoughtfully, and radiates calm even under pressure. Which one commands real respect? The answer reveals a timeless principle. Silent strength doesn't just inspire, it transforms those around it. Consider the mentor-student dynamic in ancient Stoicism. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's greatest teachers, didn't win followers with charisma alone. His power lay in his ability to hold space. Students traveled across continents not for theatrics, but to sit in the presence of a man who embodied his philosophy. When a visitor once boasted about reading volumes of Stoic texts, Epictetus quietly replied, "Show me how you live, not what you know." That's the essence of leading by example. Wisdom, when lived, becomes magnetic. Now think about your own life. Who's the person you instinctively lean toward when faced with a crisis? Chances are it's not the one who panics or dominates conversations. It's the one who remains steady, the colleague who diffuses tension with a well-timed pause. The friend who listens more than they speak, yet always seems to say the right thing. These modern-day cottos might not make headlines, but they shape lives through something far more potent, the quiet certainty of their presence. Here's the challenge this week spotlights. Identify someone in your circle who embodies this silent strength and observe them. Notice how they handle conflict, how they wield silence like a tool, how their calm seems to lower the temperature in a room. Then ask yourself, what would change if I cultivated that same grounded presence? The answer might just redefine what real influence looks like, not just in your life, but in the lives you touch. Because the legacy of the Stoics wasn't built on words alone. It was built on the spaces between them. Every action, every reaction, they all draw from the same finite well of energy within you. The Stoics saw this long before modern science confirmed it. Your attention and emotional reserves operate like a budget. Epictetus put it bluntly, guard the gate of your mind as you would a fortress. What you allow entry determines what occupies your citadel. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. Every time you engage with petty arguments, dwell on others' opinions, or rush to defend yourself against trivial slights, you're not just wasting time, you're depleting reserves that could fuel creativity, focus, or genuine connection. Think of your energy like a phone battery. You wouldn't leave apps running in the background all day, draining power for no reason. Yet that's exactly what most of us do with our mental and emotional resources. A coworker's passive-aggressive email sits in your mind like an open tab, consuming energy long after you've read it. A stranger's online comment sparks an internal debate that lingers for hours. These aren't just minor distractions, they're leaks in your reservoir, siphoning fuel away from what truly matters. Science backs this up. Studies on decision fatigue show that the more small choices or reactions we cram into a day, what to eat, how to respond to a text, whether to correct someone's misinformation, the less willpower we have left for meaningful priorities. It's why CEOs wear the same outfit daily and why Stoics like Seneca practiced morning reflection to conserve mental energy for the decisions that shape lives. Here's the experiment. For one day, track your energy leaks like a scientist. Carry a notepad and jot down every time you feel drained, not just physically, but mentally. Was it the 20-minute debate about politics with a distant relative, the mental replay of a driver who cut you off, the compulsive scroll through a social media feud? By sunset, you'll have a map of where your vitality is being spent and where it's being stolen. The solution isn't to eliminate all reactions. it's to become ruthless about allocation. Before engaging, ask Epictetus' gatekeeping question: does this deserve a place in my fortress? If it doesn't, let it pass like a ship in the night, because energy saved isn't just energy preserved, it's energy redirected toward building the life you actually want. The silent strength of non-reaction isn't about withholding, it's about investing, and that's where real power begins. There's a reason we're drawn to still waters, the way a lake at dawn mirrors the sky without a ripple, or how the deepest parts of the ocean remain undisturbed by surface storms. Nature doesn't resist stillness, it embodies it. Marcus Aurelius saw this as the ultimate teacher. In his Meditations, he wrote, "Observe how all things are transformed by nature. See the calm that follows even the wildest storm." He wasn't just admiring scenery, he was decoding a blueprint for human resilience. Think about how often we interrupt our own peace. A delayed flight sparks frustration. A critical email triggers defensiveness. We churn like shallow water at the slightest disturbance. But contrast that with the patience of a tree. It doesn't rage against winter's barrenness or rush to bloom before spring. It trusts the rhythm. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all things, and the wisdom in moving with, not against, life's currents. When we align with this patience, we're not being passive, we're borrowing the certainty of tides and seasons. Here's where mindfulness meets the wild. Next time you're near a body of water, whether a river, a pond, or even a rain puddle, pause and watch. Notice how the surface reacts to wind, momentary ripples, then a return to calm. That's your mind in miniature. Every thought, every emotion is like that breeze passing, not permanent. The water doesn't cling to the disturbance, it simply lets it go. This isn't poetic abstraction, it's practical physics. Deep water stays still because it's anchored. Your mind can do the same when anchored in perspective. Now consider the oak tree outside your window. It doesn't resent the acorn for taking years to become mighty. It doesn't measure growth daily. It simply grows. Human impatience, by contrast, treats every delay as a personal affront, as if the universe owes us haste. But nature's timeline operates on a different scale. Mountains rise millimeters per year. Canyons are carved drop by drop. The Stoics revered this incremental power. Seneca, in his letters, urged his friend Lucilius to progress quietly, not anxiously, reminding him that even the sun's daily journey appears effortless, yet it moves entire landscapes with its light. Try this practice today. Spend 10 minutes observing something natural, a cloud, a patch of grass, even ants marching in line. Resist the urge to narrate or analyze. Just witness. You'll start noticing something profound. Nature never hurries, yet everything is accomplished. The bud doesn't force itself open, it blooms when ready. The tide doesn't argue with the moon, it responds. There's a quiet intelligence in this surrender, one that doesn't diminish strength but refines it. Marcus Aurelius left us a final clue in his journal. The universe is change, life is understanding. Timing isn't something we control, it's something we harmonize with. When we stop fighting the rhythm, when we learn to stand like a redwood in wind or flow like a river around stone, we don't just endure life's storms, we become them. Drama spreads like wildfire, not because it's inevitable, but because we keep handing it fuel. Seneca saw this 2,000 years ago when he warned against becoming an actor in someone else's play. He wasn't just talking about grand theatrical performances. He meant the daily scripts we're handed, the co-worker who drags you into their grievances, the family member who thrives on stirring conflict, the online stranger demanding you join their outrage. Every time we react, we're accepting a role in their drama. But here's the secret. The curtain only falls when you refuse to take the stage. Think about gossip, that ancient toxin masquerading as connection. It feels harmless in the moment, a whispered complaint here, a juicy rumor there. But gossip isn't just information. It's an invitation to invest your energy in someone else's narrative. The Stoics called this borrowing trouble. When you engage, even as a listener, you're renting space in your mind for conflicts that aren't yours. Modern research confirms this. Workplace gossip doesn't just lower morale. It literally drains cognitive resources, leaving less focus for meaningful work. The antidote isn't confrontation, it's quiet disengagement. Enter the gray rock technique, a modern twist on Stoic restraint. Originally developed as a strategy for dealing with toxic personalities, it's shockingly simple. Become as uninteresting as a gray rock. When confronted with drama, respond with neutrality, short answers, minimal emotion, zero intrigue. Not out of fear, but strategy. Like a fire deprived of oxygen, drama without an audience sputters out. Picture the office provocateur who thrives on stirring the pot. They toss you a rumor, and instead of leaning in, you reply, I hadn't heard that, and change the subject. No judgment, no resistance, just an unshakable lack of interest. This isn't about suppressing your personality. It's about reclaiming your sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius faced this daily in the snake pit of imperial politics. His solution: let your actions speak, not your reactions. When senators plotted against him, he didn't counter with intrigue. He doubled down on governing justly. His silence wasn't weakness, it was a force field. The more they pushed, the more his composure revealed their pettiness. Now, turn the lens inward. What's the drama source in your life that's been draining you? Maybe it's the group chat that spirals into negativity, the relative who baits you into political debates, or the social media feed designed to provoke. Whatever it is, try an experiment this week. For every invitation to react, ask Seneca's question, is this my play to perform in? If it's not, let the moment pass like a cloud. You'll discover something liberating. The less you engage, the more you realize how much of life's chaos wasn't yours to carry, and that space you create. That's where your real power grows. Every decision you make, especially the unconscious ones, spends a finite resource, your focus. The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus framed this with striking clarity. We are wealthy in our choices, but paupers in our attention. He wasn't talking about money. He was mapping an economy of effort where every reaction is an investment, and wisdom lies in spending where it yields growth. Picture two people at a marketplace. One haggles loudly over every penny, exhausting themselves for marginal gains. The other moves deliberately, purchasing only what nourishes them. Reactive people are the spendthrifts of mental energy, squandering reserves on battles that leave them bankrupt when real opportunities arise. Take a modern workplace example. Two colleagues receive the same critical email. One fires off a defensive reply, drafts 3 more unsent responses, then spends lunch venting to coworkers. The other pauses, asks whether the feedback holds value, and responds only to what serves progress. Both faced identical stimuli, but their ROI on emotional expenditure couldn't be more different. The Stoics would call this arete, the practice of aligning actions with virtue rather than impulse. It's not about ignoring slights. It's about auditing whether engaging with them enriches your character or depletes your reserves. Imagine your mind as a startup with limited venture capital. Every reaction is a funding decision. Complaining about traffic, that's a seed round for frustration. Arguing with an internet stranger, series of funding for wasted time. Meanwhile, the compound interest of guarded attention invested in learning, creating, or nurturing relationships pays dividends in resilience. Epictetus, who trained students in this very calculus, put it plainly: no thief can steal your will, only you can surrender it. every unnecessary reaction is a voluntary withdrawal from your account of peace. Here's the pivot for one day. Track your reactions like a financial ledger. Divide a page into 2 columns, expense and asset. Each time you feel provoked, a rude comment, a delayed train, a petty critique, note whether your response drained you expense or strengthened you asset. You'll start seeing patterns. Maybe defending your taste in movies to a nitpicking friend is an expense, while letting the critique pass frees mental space for a creative project. The goal isn't to eliminate all reactions, it's to become your own chief financial officer of focus. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in the most pressure-filled role imaginable. As emperor, he faced daily provocations, conspiracies, betrayals, logistical disasters. Yet his journal reveals a man obsessed with energy allocation. Ask yourself with every action, is this necessary? He knew that ruling an empire, or even just your own life, demands ruthless prioritization. The 21st century equivalent, that notification pinging on your phone, doesn't need your attention just because it demands it. The coworker's snide remark only derails you if you fund its journey. Musonius Rufus left us a final equation. What we ignore, we empower ourselves to master. Non-reaction isn't avoidance, it's the strategic withdrawal of resources from trivial battles to fund meaningful victories. So tonight, ask yourself, where have I been an emotional spendthrift, and what could I build if I invested that energy instead? The answer might just reveal your path to becoming the calmest, most resourceful version of yourself. There's an unexpected humility in silence, not the kind that shrinks from confrontation, but the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to prove their worth through reaction. Epictetus cut straight to the heart of it when he said, "The fool needs an audience for his anger." Think about that for a moment. When someone lashes out, whether in person or online, what they're really seeking isn't resolution, it's validation. They want their outburst to matter, to ripple outward and force others into their orbit of chaos. But when you refuse to react, you're not just preserving your peace, you're denying them the spotlight they crave. That's humility in action, the strength to remain unswayed by performances that don't deserve your attention. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. A driver honks aggressively, hoping to provoke a reaction. A coworker drops a passive-aggressive comment, waiting for you to bite. Even online, strangers lob insults like fishing lines, hoping to reel someone into their drama. In each case, the provocation only gains power when met with engagement, but silence, it's the ultimate deflator. Like a balloon losing air, the tension dissipates when there's no one to inflate it. The Stoics understood this dynamic intimately. They saw non-reaction not as surrender, but as a strategic withdrawal, a way to let others' chaos burn itself out without fueling the fire. This is where the oxygen mask principle comes in. On an airplane, you're instructed to secure your own mask before assisting others. Why? Because you're no help to anyone if you're gasping for air. The same applies to emotional provocations. When you rush to engage with every slight or criticism, you're prioritizing someone else's drama over your own stability. But when you pause, when you take that moment to secure your calm first, you regain the clarity to ask, does this actually require my energy? Most of the time, the answer is no. The insult, the criticism, the petty jab, they're not emergencies. They're just noise, and noise only distracts those who stop to listen. So here's a challenge. Reflect on the last time you felt compelled to react. Maybe it was a social media argument, a family disagreement, or even just an internal monologue replaying someone's harsh words. Now ask yourself, what did I mistake for a call to action? Was it really about justice or just ego? Was it truly necessary or just habitual? The Stoics would argue that much of what we react to isn't a demand, it's a test. A test of our ability to discern what deserves our attention and what only pretends to. Humility, in this sense, isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less, freeing yourself from the need to constantly assert, defend, or correct. When you stop feeding provocations with reactions, you start noticing something profound. The people who thrive on chaos eventually move on when they realize you're not a willing participant. And what's left? A quieter, steadier space where your real priorities can thrive. That's the humility of non-engagement, not shrinking from the world, but rising above its petty battles so you can focus on the ones that truly matter. Imagine planting an acorn and digging it up every few days to check its progress. Absurd, right? Yet that's exactly how we treat our own growth when we prioritize instant reactions over enduring impact. Marcus Aurelius had a remedy for this short-sightedness, his view from above exercise. He'd mentally rise above the hustle of daily life, picturing himself from a mountaintop, the quarrels, the petty grievances, even the empire's crises shrinking to insignificance against the backdrop of time. From that vantage point, what mattered wasn't who won today's argument, but who remained steadfast in their principles across decades. That's the long game where strength isn't measured in reactions, but in roots. Now contrast that with social media's dopamine-driven economy. Every outrage, hot take, or clapback is designed for immediate payoff, a surge of likes, a flurry of shares, a fleeting sense of vindication. But scroll back through your own feeds from years ago. How many of those reactions still hold weight? How many built something lasting? The Stoics would argue that most were just emotional fireworks, bright in the moment, then gone without a trace. Meanwhile, the person who stayed silent, conserved energy, and channeled focus into meaningful work, their impact compounds like interest, quietly outlasting every viral moment. Nature's blueprint for this patience is the oak tree. It doesn't rush to outgrow saplings in a single season. It invests years in deepening roots before stretching skyward. Storms that snap shallow plants barely shake it because its strength lies in what's unseen, the slow, deliberate work beneath the surface. Human growth follows the same law. Every time you bypass a reactive impulse, whether it's the urge to correct a stranger online or to prove a point in a meeting, you're not losing an opportunity. You're depositing energy into your inner reserves where it quietly transforms into resilience. Here's the challenge. Identify one reactive habit that's stealing from your long-term potential. Maybe it's compulsively checking notifications, turning minor critiques into day-ruining events, or rehearsing comebacks for conversations that don't matter. Now imagine your life 5 years from today. Will that habit have built anything of value, or will it have been a leak in your focus, draining time and energy from what truly counts? The Stoics weren't against emotion, they were against letting emotion hijack legacy. Your patience today isn't passivity, it's the quiet confidence of someone playing chess while the world plays checkers. Every move matters, but only if you're thinking 10 steps ahead. The word indifference might sound cold at first, like you're shutting yourself off from feeling anything at all. But to the Stoics, it meant something radically different: freedom. Epictetus drew a line straight down the center of human experience with one piercing question: is this up to me? On one side, everything outside your control, other people's opinions, traffic jams, whether the coffee shop gets your order wrong. On the other, your judgments, your efforts, your focus. Indifference in this light isn't about not caring, it's about caring deeply for the right things, while letting the rest fall away like dead leaves. Picture a chessboard. The novice panics when a pawn is taken, scrambling to retaliate. But the grandmaster, they barely glance at lost pieces because their eyes are fixed on the king's safety. Every unnecessary reaction is a pawn sacrificed, not just a loss of material, but a leak in your strategic reserves. That's Stoic indifference, the discipline to know which battles are distractions and which are decisive. When someone insults you and you don't engage, you haven't lost the exchange. You've preserved your king. Your peace isn't just intact, it's fortified. This isn't apathy. Apathy yawns at life, shrugging at both joy and suffering. Indifference to the Stoics was laser-focused engagement just with what matters. Think of a sculptor chiseling marble. The artist isn't indifferent to the statue emerging. They're ruthlessly indifferent to the chips flying away. Every strike of the hammer is a choice. This stays. This goes, that's the practice. When you feel the urge to react to a snide comment, a bad review, a friend's thoughtless remark, ask Epictetus' question, is this up to me? If it's not, let it fall like marble dust. Now grab a pen. Let's make this tangible. List 3 things that currently hook your emotions but don't deserve the investment. 1. The stranger's road rage. Their honking doesn't shorten your trip. Your irritation does. 2. The algorithm's outrage bait. That incendiary headline gains power only when you click. 3. The coworker's chronic complaining. Their negativity isn't your cargo to carry. Notice what happens when you see them written down. They shrink. Not because they're trivial, but because you've drawn the line between what's yours and what's noise. That's the freedom of indifference, not a lack of feeling, but the sovereignty to choose where your feelings go. The more you practice this, the lighter you'll feel, as if you've been carrying weights you didn't know you could set down. And in that lightness, that's where your real power begins. Marcus Aurelius never intended his private journal to be read by the world. Those pages, now known as meditations, were his nightly ritual, a sacred space to untangle the day's reactions before they tangled him. He called it the washing of the mind. Picture him by lamplight, quill in hand, transforming the emperor's frustrations into ink, a subordinate's incompetence, a senator's betrayal, even his own fleeting anger. Each stroke wasn't just recording events, it was releasing their grip on him. That's the alchemy of Stoic journaling, not dwelling on what happened, but dissolving its power over you through deliberate reflection. Modern culture has lost this art. We've replaced the privacy of parchment with the performative rage of social media rants. Public venting might feel cathartic in the moment, like slamming a door, but it's a temporary release with long-term costs. Every time we broadcast our reactions, we're not just expressing emotion, we're reinforcing it, etching it deeper into our neural pathways. Neuroscience confirms this. Vocalizing anger amplifies it, while writing about it privately activates the brain's problem-solving regions. The Stoics knew this intuitively. When Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to pour out your heart in secret, he wasn't advocating suppression. He was prescribing transformation. Here's how to reclaim this ritual. Tonight, try the burn letter exercise. Grab a sheet of paper and pour out every unfiltered reaction you didn't express today: the coworker's backhanded compliment, the stranger's rude gesture, the simmering resentment you've been carrying. Write without censorship, as if no one will ever see it. Then light a match safely and watch those words turn to ash. This isn't just symbolism, it's neuroscience in action. The physical act of destruction signals to your brain that the emotion has been processed and released. Like Marcus burning his private frustrations into wisdom, you're converting reactive energy into liberation. But there's a deeper layer. Stoic journaling isn't just about venting, it's about interrogating your emotions with curiosity. After writing your raw reactions, ask, what story am I telling myself about this event? Is that narrative true? Maybe the driver who cut you off wasn't malicious, just distracted. Perhaps the critique that stung holds a seed of useful feedback. This shift from "why did this happen to me" to "what can I learn from this" is where journaling moves from diary to dojo, training your mind to find strength in stillness. So consider this. What emotion have you been expressing outwardly that might benefit from the alchemy of private reflection? Is it the itch to correct every minor inaccuracy, or the habit of rehearsing arguments in your head long after they're over? Whatever it is, give it the gift of silence tonight. Let the page hold what the world doesn't need to see, because the quietest moments often forge the strongest resolve, not in the heat of reaction, but in the cool clarity of ink meeting paper, then rising as smoke. There's a quiet myth that needs dismantling: the idea that Stoic non-reaction means locking away emotions like secrets in a vault. Seneca shattered this misconception in his letters to Lucilius, where he wrote, "Even in the strongest fortress there must be a gate." He wasn't advocating for emotional suppression, that toxic habit of bottling up feelings until they corrode you from within. True Stoic discernment is about choosing when and with whom to share, not whether to feel at all. Think of it like a pressure valve on a steam engine. Without occasional release, the buildup becomes explosive. But when opened intentionally and in controlled bursts, it preserves the integrity of the entire system. This balance is where modern psychology and ancient wisdom converge. Studies show that suppressing emotions doesn't eliminate stress, it redirects it inward, manifesting as physical tension, insomnia, or even chronic illness. The Stoics knew this intuitively. When Seneca advised his friend to share your burdens but do not multiply them, he was drawing a line between healthy vulnerability and emotional dumping. One is strategic, the other is surrender. Picture two friends after a frustrating day. The first vents indiscriminately, amplifying the emotion with every retelling. The second pauses, reflects, then shares selectively with a trusted listener, not to dwell but to distill clarity from the chaos. That's the difference between scattering your energy and channeling it. Here's where the pressure valve metaphor becomes practical. Identify one person in your life who embodies what the Stoics called a wise mirror, someone who reflects your emotions without amplifying them, who listens without needing to fix. This isn't about finding an echo chamber, it's about choosing a sounding board that helps you refine your reactions rather than rehearse them. For Marcus Aurelius, this was his teacher Rusticus. For Seneca, it was Lucilius. These weren't just friends, they were emotional co-regulators, offering the rare combination of empathy and objectivity. Try this exercise tonight. Recall a recent moment when you felt the urge to react, maybe a work conflict or a personal slight. Instead of venting publicly or ruminating alone, write down what you'd say to your chosen confidant. Then ask Seneca's filter question: does this sharing serve my peace or just prolong my disturbance? You might find that half of what you plan to say loses its urgency when held to that standard. The goal isn't to eliminate expression, but to elevate it, to transform emotional noise into purposeful communication. The paradox of Stoic vulnerability is this: by being more selective with your openness, you become more authentic. When you stop scattering your emotions to anyone who will listen, you preserve their weight for the connections that matter. Like a gardener watering roots instead of spraying leaves, you nourish what's deep rather than what's superficial. So tonight, light a candle, open Seneca's letters, or sit with your journal. Let your fortress have its gate, not as a weakness, but as a design feature of unshakable strength. A lighthouse doesn't debate the storm it stands. Waves crash, winds howl, but its beam cuts through the chaos because its foundation is unshakable. Epictetus called this the rule of life, a set of non-negotiable principles that guide you like constellations in the night sky. First, tell yourself what kind of person you want to be, he wrote. Then do what you must to keep being that person. That's the anchor of principle. When your values are clear, reactions become choices, not reflexes. You no longer sway with every opinion because you've built on bedrock, not sand. Think of two people facing criticism. The first scans the room, adjusting their stance to please each new voice. The second listens, weighs, but doesn't wobble, not out of stubbornness, but because their compass points deeper. The difference isn't confidence, it's clarity. A principle-driven person isn't immune to doubt, they're just tethered to something stronger. Like a tree rooted in granite, they bend without breaking because their growth follows an inner logic, not the shifting winds of external validation. History offers a masterclass in this through Cotto the Younger. While Roman politicians flip-flopped for power, Cotto's adherence to Stoic virtue was so unwavering that even his enemies respected him. When Julius Caesar, sensing an opportunity, once slipped him a note during a Senate debate, Cotto read it aloud, revealing a bribe without hesitation. He didn't agonize over the consequences or weigh the social cost. His principles were his operating system, rendering corruption unthinkable. That's the power of a rule of life. It simplifies decisions by making some paths invisible. Now contrast that with modern life's endless reactivity. Social media algorithms thrive on knee-jerk engagement, outrage, hot takes, performative takes. The person without principles is like a ship without ballast, capsizing at every wave. But the person anchored in values, they're the lighthouse. Storms may rage around them, but their light never flickers because it's fueled by something deeper than circumstance. Here's the challenge: grab a notebook and draw a line down the center. On one side, list the values you think guide you. On the other, list the choices you've actually made this week. Do they align? Epictetus warned that we often confuse borrowed ideals with true convictions. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Your principles aren't what you post about, they're what you prioritize when no one's watching. The parent who chooses patience over yelling during a tantrum isn't just suppressing anger, they're honoring a deeper commitment to kindness. The worker who declines to gossip isn't avoiding conflict, they're upholding integrity. That's the silent language of principle. It doesn't shout its code, it lives it. So tonight, ask yourself, what's my lighthouse? What few values are so essential that violating them would make me a stranger to myself? Write them down, then test them when the next storm comes, and you'll know where to stand. Imagine waking up every morning and mentally rehearsing your worst-case scenarios, not out of fear, but as a form of emotional armor. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evil, and Seneca was its most vivid practitioner. He'd board a ship and immediately visualize it sinking, not to torment himself, but to inoculate his mind against panic if disaster struck. What's the point, you might ask? The same reason we get vaccines. Small, controlled exposures build immunity. By imagining adversity before it arrives, you're not inviting misfortune, you're stripping it of its power to shock you into reactive chaos. Think of it like a fire drill. The alarm sounds, but because you've practiced evacuation routes 100 times, your body moves with calm precision. There's no screaming, no frozen panic, just trained response. That's negative visualization in action. When you mentally rehearse losing your job, facing criticism, or even encountering rudeness, you're not manifesting disaster, you're drafting an emotional blueprint. So when life inevitably throws those curveballs, your reaction isn't raw panic. It's the steady recognition of a familiar path. Here's the neuroscience behind it. Your brain can't reliably distinguish between vivid imagination and lived experience. When you vividly picture staying calm during a future conflict, say, a heated family dinner or a tense work meeting, you're laying down neural tracks for that exact response. It's why athletes visualize perfect performances before competitions. The Stoics were doing the same thing with emotional resilience. Marcus Aurelius would journal about his own death, not to brood, but to dissolve its terror. By staring at the worst-case scenario until it lost its fangs, he could face each day with unshakable presence. Now, let's make this practical. Tonight, pick one common trigger, maybe traffic jams, a critical email, or a friend canceling plans. Close your eyes and mentally walk through the scenario in granular detail. See the red taillights stretching ahead, feel the grip of the steering wheel, hear the honking. But here's the key: imagine yourself responding with detached curiosity instead of white-knuckled frustration. Interesting, this delay gives me time to listen to that podcast. That mental rehearsal isn't just preparation, it's rewiring. You're teaching your amygdala that this stimulus doesn't warrant a 5-alarm reaction. Seneca took this further with his shipwreck exercise. He'd imagine losing everything: his wealth, his status, even his freedom. Then ask, what's left? The answer was always the same: himself, his character, his choices, his ability to find meaning even in ruin. That's the ultimate goal of negative visualization. Not to fear life's storms, but to realize you're unsinkable because your worth isn't tied to external conditions. So next time you feel the itch to react, pause and ask, have I rehearsed this? If the answer's no, that's your cue to start. The more you practice in the theater of your mind, the less life's surprises will ever catch you off guard. Retreat is often mistaken for weakness, as if stepping back means surrendering ground. But Marcus Aurelius saw it differently. He wrote, "When you encounter someone irrational, yield as you would to a storm or wild animal." There's no dishonor in avoiding a battle that can't be won with reason. That's the essence of strategic disengagement, recognizing that some conflicts aren't worth your energy because they operate outside the realm of logic. Think of it like trying to argue with thunder. The storm doesn't care about your rebuttals, it only knows how to rage. The real power lies in knowing when to step indoors and wait for clearer skies. History is filled with masterclasses in tactical withdrawal. Take the story of Fabius Maximus, the Roman general who faced Hannibal's invading army. While others clamored for direct confrontation, Fabius chose a different path, harassing supply lines, avoiding pitched battles, and letting time erode Hannibal's strength. His contemporaries mocked him as the delayer, but his patience saved Rome. What looked like retreat was actually a long-game strategy that turned attrition into victory. Centuries later, George Washington employed the same principle during the American Revolution, trading territory for time until the moment was ripe for decisive action. In both cases, what seemed like passivity was actually precision redirecting force rather than meeting it head-on. Martial arts reveal the same wisdom. Aikido practitioners don't block an opponent's strike. They blend with its motion, using the attacker's energy against them. The principle is called Ju, softness overcoming hardness. It's not about brute resistance but intelligent adaptation. Imagine someone shoves you. If you plant your feet and push back, you're locked in a contest of strength. But if you step slightly aside, their own momentum carries them past you. That's the art of strategic retreat, letting foolish aggression exhaust itself while you conserve energy for what matters. So here's the challenge. Identify one conflict in your life where stepping back might actually be the stronger move. Maybe it's the coworker who thrives on drama, baiting you into debates that go nowhere. Or the relative who always turns family gatherings into ideological battlegrounds. Ask yourself, is this a battle of wits or a test of patience? If it's the latter, consider the Stoic alternative. Withdraw not out of fear but strategy. Let their words hang in the air unanswered, their provocations unacknowledged. Like a judo master yielding to a reckless charge, you're not running away, you're choosing the terrain where you'll stand firm. And often you'll find that the loudest storms pass fastest when no one stands outside to hear them. Your body speaks before you do, not in words, but in the subtle language of posture, tension, and stillness. Epictetus observed this when he wrote, "First, keep the commanding part of your soul tranquil, and then the body will follow suit." He wasn't just talking about appearances. He was revealing a profound truth. The way you carry yourself isn't separate from your inner state, it's a mirror of it. Watch someone who's deeply rattled. Their fingers drum, their legs bounce, their gaze darts like a trapped bird. Now contrast that with someone anchored in stoic resolve. Even in chaos, their spine stays straight, their breath steady, their gestures measured. The difference isn't just physical, it's philosophical. One body broadcasts panic, the other radiates sovereignty. Consider two people receiving bad news. The first collapses into their chair, hands clutching their head, breath shallow. The second inhales deeply, shoulders settling like roots into earth. Both feel the same initial sting, but the second person's body becomes their ally, not their betrayer. This is what the Stoics meant by commanding the soul. Your posture isn't just how you hold yourself, it's how you hold your power. Ancient Roman senators trained for this. Before entering debates, they'd practice walking with weighted robes to cultivate gravitas, not as theater, but as embodied discipline. Every step was a rehearsal for composure under pressure. Modern science confirms this mind-body dialogue. Studies show that adopting expansive, grounded postures reduces cortisol and increases testosterone, literally shifting your biochemistry toward calm assertiveness. Conversely, slumping or fidgeting triggers a stress loop, telling your brain, "We're in danger." The Stoics didn't have fMRI scans, but they intuited this connection. When Epictetus advised students to stand like a rock against which waves break in vain, he was prescribing more than metaphor. He was offering a physiological strategy for resilience. Try this now, the mountain pose exercise. Plant your feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly soft. Imagine a cord lifting your spine from the crown of your head, shoulders rolling back without tension. Breathe into your belly, not your chest. Hold for 30 seconds. Notice how your mind quiets as your body stabilizes. This isn't just yoga, it's Stoic training. You're not just standing, you're embodying the principle that external turbulence need not shake your core. Next time stress strikes, tune into your physical reactions. Is your jaw clenched? Are your toes curling in your shoes? Those aren't just symptoms of stress, they're its amplifiers. The Stoic remedy is simple: interrupt the feedback loop. Unclench your hands, relax your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Let your weight settle evenly through your feet. These micro-adjustments signal to your nervous system, we're not under siege. Over time, this becomes unconscious, a bodily reflex of equanimity. The true test comes in motion. Watch how you walk through a crowded airport or navigate a tense conversation. Are your strides hurried and uneven, or paced and purposeful? Do your gestures flutter like leaves or flow like water? The Stoics knew that mastery begins in stillness but proves itself in movement. That's why Marcus Aurelius practiced composing his expression before court sessions, not to hide emotion, but to ensure his body reflected his principles, not his passing moods. Your body isn't just a vessel for Stoic philosophy, it's its living expression. Every time you choose stillness over fidgeting, grounded breath over shallow gasps, you're not just managing stress, you're sculpting a presence that commands respect without demanding it. And in a world that mistakes frenzy for fervor, that quiet authority speaks louder than any reaction ever could. History rarely remembers the loudest voices, only those who spoke with their actions. Take Cato the Younger's final moments. Surrounded by Caesar's forces, facing certain death, he didn't rage or beg. he read Plato's Phaedo on immortality, then calmly took his own life rather than surrender his principles. 2,000 years later, we still speak of him not for battles won or speeches given, but for the unshakable composure that made his very presence a moral compass. His contemporaries who shouted louder, their names are footnotes. That's the paradox of legacy. The less you react, the more you're remembered. Think of the difference between a stone tossed into water and the ripples it creates. The ripples spread wide at first, dramatic and impossible to ignore, just like viral outrage or heated public feuds, but they fade quickly, leaving no trace. The stone, though, it sinks silently, yet remains where it landed, undisturbed by the chaos it briefly caused. That's the choice we all face daily. Do we want to be the ripple, loud and temporary, or the stone whose weight outlasts the noise? Modern culture thrives on ripples. Social media rewards hot takes and clapbacks, mistaking visibility for impact. But scroll through your own feeds from years ago. How many of those reactions still hold meaning? The coworker who humiliated you in a meeting, the stranger who picked an online fight, those ripples vanished long ago. Meanwhile, the teacher who stayed patient with your struggles, the mentor who listened more than they spoke, their influence lingers like bedrock. Dignity isn't just a virtue, it's a time capsule. Consider two leaders facing crisis. One holds press conferences daily, blaming opponents and stoking fury. The other works quietly, addressing problems without fanfare. Whose leadership do we recall decades later? The Stoics knew this instinctively. Marcus Aurelius could have spent his reign chronicling his grievances. Instead, his private journal, never meant for publication, became a masterclass in how to lead with quiet integrity. The lesson, legacy, isn't crafted in the spotlight. It's built in the shadows of restraint. So here's the question to carry forward. What emotional imprint do you want to leave? Not just in grand moments, but in the small, unrehearsed ones, when you're cut off in traffic, when someone undermines you, when the world tries to pull you into its chaos. Every time you choose not to react, you're not just preserving your peace, you're chiseling the kind of person history remembers, not for their outbursts, but for their depth. The ripples will always fade, the stone endures. Freedom isn't found in having the last word, it's found in not needing to. Strength isn't proven by how loudly you react, but by how effortlessly you can choose not to. And wisdom is knowing the difference. What we've explored together isn't just a philosophy, it's a liberation. Every time you resist the urge to engage with pettiness, every moment you pause before reacting, you're not being passive. You're actively reclaiming sovereignty over your attention, your energy, and ultimately, your life. Marcus Aurelius left us a blueprint for this unshakable calm, his concept of the inner citadel. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That's the ultimate reward of mastering non-reaction. It's not about building walls to keep the world out. It's about cultivating a sanctuary within, where external chaos can't dictate your peace. Think of it like this: the more you practice stillness in the face of provocation, the more your mind becomes like a deep ocean. Surface waves may stir, but the depths remain undisturbed. Now let's make this tangible. Before you close this video, pick one principle to embody starting today. Maybe it's the 5-second pause before responding to criticism. Perhaps it's the gray rock technique with that colleague who thrives on drama. Or it could be as simple as asking Epictetus' question, "Is this up to me?" before investing energy in a conflict. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. Lasting change grows from small, consistent actions. This isn't the end, it's an invitation. If these ideas resonate with you, join a community of others who are turning ancient wisdom into modern resilience. Hit subscribe and let's keep this conversation going. Together, we can build lives that aren't ruled by reactions, but guided by intention. Because the silent language of strength isn't just for Stoics, it's for anyone ready to stop performing in someone else's play and start writing their own script. The next chapter begins with your choice. Will you react or will you